At the same time, we want to transform your bed in a medical grade device that can save your life. So we will be able to detect sleep apnea. We will be able to let you know if you are getting sick, or to predict potentially if you have a stroke. We will be able potentially to see if there is anything wrong with your organs or early signs of a cancer. So if you go back to what I was saying earlier, the bed has a lot of space. And we, instead of wasting that space with pieces of dumb foam, we will introduce sensors.
Matteo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Super excited.
Yeah, man. So I've been seeing your brand 8 Sleep all over the internet. I had Josh from Levels on a few episodes ago, and he was the first person he recommended that I should speak to out of his friend group, essentially. So really excited to have you on. So look, man, this is an interesting episode because if you look at the last few episodes I've done, we've been doing kind of hardcore business stuff, internet related stuff, technology related stuff. But this episode, I actually wanted to split into kind of 2 parts. One was a deep dive into sleep and actionable things that people can do to improve their sleep. And then the second part was really about your business, the uniqueness of your business being both a hardware and software brand. Really understanding how you've been able to launch this really successful product. So excited to get into it. So just to kick off, I'd love to just hear a background of what you're working on.
Yeah, sure. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 8 Sleep. We are the first sleep fitness company. So think of sleep as a part of your health and as a part of your fitness. We develop a technology that can improve your sleep performance. In particular, we use thermoregulation. So we change the temperature of your body during the night to maximize sleep efficiency and performance. Our customers fall asleep faster and get more restful sleep, up to 30-40% better sleep than people sleeping on a piece of dumb foam.
Yeah, I love the way you talk about smart mattresses versus dumb mattresses. So we'll definitely dig into that a little bit more. So just from the outside, I could see you guys have raised like $70 million plus, it looks like. So you've already got to Series C level. On your site, it says 30,000 customers or happy customers or something like that. So just extrapolating that out, and I'm completely making these numbers up. Your mattress sells for $2,500. That would equal in the tens of millions of dollars of revenue. I don't know if you're able to share a revenue range at all or anything to give a sense of scale.
We have many more customers than that. I think we are above 30,000. And yeah, we are in the tens of millions, and we are growing pretty fast, which is really exciting. So this month should be our new record in revenue.
Amazing. But so you're European like me. We both landed in the States, as people listening could probably tell. You grew up in Italy, right?
Correct.
So just tell me a little bit about your move, like your coming to America moment, because it sounds like you had a successful exit or company in the past working in solar in Europe. And you came over to the US to set this up, it looks like. So yeah, I'm curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, I had the first clean tech company in Europe that I sold. Then I came to the US. I replicated the same business model just in the United States. And that company, all the assets got acquired by Panasonic. And then I started 8 Sleep. So I moved here originally for clean tech, and after clean tech, I jumped into health tech.
Love it, man. So I'm just curious, like just from your experience moving from Europe to the US, we've been through a kind of crazy time in the last year anyway, in many different ways. I'm just curious, like your experience as a European in the States, like what are there things that you miss? Are there things that you've kind of grown to really love about being in the States? whether that's business or personal? I'm just curious as someone who's also made the move.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the States, they welcome in me probably the best way possible. I really like the way to do business here because it's really efficient. People are straightforward. They're really on time, which in Italy is not the average. And no, you come here to really do business at the best level. I think I love my country and I love to go back, in particular for holidays and vacation. But on the business side, I think we're pretty lucky to be both here.
That's cool, man. It sounds like you're kind of living the American dream in a way, where you've got a really successful company, and it sounds like you're here for a long time. So let's hone into sleep, because I know you've worked in clean tech previously, which is obviously an emerging and growing industry. And now you've gone into sleep, which traditionally isn't necessarily a thriving, growing industry in the previous way. Like if you look at just mattresses or dumb mattresses, as you say. But you guys have actually built something completely revolutionary in that space, best in class in that space. I'm just curious, like, why did you want to hone into sleep in the first place? Like, was that by accident, or was it something you purposely have thought about and were interested in?
I have always been an athlete. So when I was a teenager, I was playing tennis tournaments, I was doing ski races, and then I got into motorsport. So as an athlete, you're always thinking about performance and improving your own performance. Then I became an entrepreneur, and I was the typical entrepreneur working long hours at night. And I started thinking, okay, can I compress my sleep? So can I sleep less, but still recover as fast as possible? And that is how I started looking into the space. And I started wondering why Elon Musk is taking me to Mars, but I'm still spending a third of my life on a piece of dumb foam. And that is how everything started.
Yeah, I love that. And the way I kind of think of health, and I'm definitely not an expert, is kind of 4 big categories. Sleep being the first one, incredibly important and probably the most overlooked for a lot of people. And then obviously food, nutrition, exercise, movement. And I guess the 4th one, I'd say like kind of stress or managing stress, but maybe the other 3 kind of impact that anyway. So with sleep in particular though, like say you're looking at this space of sleep and you've got a personal reason to be involved in it. How did you land onto a smart mattress?
Yeah, so we really started from the problem. So we wanted to understand, okay, how can we improve sleep performance, right? How can we compress sleep? And aside sleep medical disorders, temperature is the biggest factor impacting the quality of your sleep. So at that point, we knew we had to tackle temperature. And to do that, we needed space. And a mattress is able to offer plenty of space to introduce a technology. And we also needed a form factor that was seamless and would let us track everything about your biometrics. So that's the reason why we're not really a mattress company. Yeah, we do a mattress, but we are really a data and sleep enhancement company. And the mattress was just probably the smartest form factor we could pick.
Yeah, I guess there's other players in this space attacking it from different angles. I guess 2 that stand out to me. One is Oura Ring, which I'm wearing one right now, which helps measure sleep. And I really like it. I'm a pretty big fan of it. And I guess another one attacking it from like a software point of view is, I guess Calm comes to mind, even though they started as a meditation app. And they've kind of expanded into sleep stories and managing that sort of stuff. So you kind of explain like having the mattress as a form factor, but there's obviously quite a lot of problems with having a hardware business too, right? Like it's not just you can press a button and push out a bunch of code, and that's all you have to worry about to iterate each time. So was that something you had to consciously think about, the pros and cons of taking down that approach?
I think the good news is that we didn't know what we didn't know at the time, and we were naive, and so we decided to go for hardware without fully understanding how complicated it was. Now, 5 years later, I think having an hardware platform is a great technological moat, and so it protects the company and makes us unique. Obviously, to get to this point, we had to go through a lot of ups and downs.
I'd love for us to go into a little bit more about the early stages. So you have this idea, and you want to attack this area. Like, how does someone actually start in this sort of space? Because it's something probably quite capital intensive. So I'm assuming one part of your brain is saying, how am I going to fund this? I don't know if that's something you originally wanted to do yourself because you had some success previously. The other part is probably thinking, who else am I going to work with? It looks like you have several co-founders. So just take me back to that moment. Like, what was going through your mind to the steps that you had to take to actually get to launching something like this?
Everything really started with Max and I. Max is our CTO, and he built the first prototype of the technology in his garage in San Francisco. We came up, I was already looking at sleep, and then we came up together with an idea about, okay, what is the first type of technology that we can build, and Max built it. Then we launched an Indiegogo. So one of our co-founders, she runs growth and marketing, and she led that whole campaign. And that pre-orders campaign was pretty successful. I think we sold 8,000 units just in pre-orders, and that is what unlocked Y Combinator and our seed round.
Got you, man. And so, how much did you raise at the seed round then?
I think it was $6 million.
And that was like 5-6 years ago by this point.
That was 2015.
So it sounds like when you launched on Indiegogo, you got 8,000 pre-orders already, which is hugely successful, especially for something of this price range. It's not like you're selling a $60, smart mug or something like that. It sounds like there was quite a heavy change straight away almost from that moment, because originally the mattress, your original product, was really just about measuring sleep, is my understanding. And then from feedback from customers or people who bought that initial round, they took you down this direction, which was thermal regulation. So could you take me back to that moment that you guys launched this thing, it's working, and straight away you're already seeing feedback like, hey, we want this other feature. How do you decide like that's the route to go down versus saying, okay, we're going to stick to what we originally planned?
Yeah, so we knew since from the beginning that we wanted to do thermoregulation, but the key thing of thermoregulation is having a fixed temperature the whole night is wrong. And so our technology had to be able to pick your biometrics, and based on the biometrics, then to adjust temperature. So that is why we started only with tracking, very similar to what other wearable devices they do. We just didn't require our users to charge or wear anything. It was just embedded into the bed. And so that was step one. And then at a certain point when Kozla came in and we raised our round with them, we finally had the money and the expertise to be able to build the pod technology, which has thermoregulation. So it was just, let's say, a journey. Step one was to be able to build a technology that could track all of your biometrics. Step two was to build the thermoregulation that adjusts based on your biometrics.
I guess that's kind of like step one, step two. And I've heard you discuss kind of like the future too. So as you said earlier, you're not just a mattress company, you're a sleep fitness company, I think I've heard you say, which I really like. And hearing you, at first, if I'm really honest, I heard that and I thought, okay, that sounds like great marketing speak. It sounds like a CEO pitching this company, right? But then when I started hearing the different spheres that you're actually looking at, so a few that I remember off the top of my head were oxygen levels that you would be trying to control in that environment, humidity levels, even light, maybe sound. So the full kind of experience of sleep. And we're going to dig into, some tips for that a little bit later. But I'm curious, like, as someone who's looking 5-10 years out, maybe, like, what does that kind of vision of your sleep solution look like?
Yeah, so we have really, we foresee two pillars. One, we want to compress sleep. What if you could sleep only 6 hours and get more rest than when you were sleeping 8 hours? How we do it? By managing temperature and the whole environment, and another couple of actions that we are going to take for you as you sleep. Then at the same time, we want to transform your bed in a medical grade device that can save your life. So we will be able to detect sleep apnea. We will be able to let you know if you are getting sick, or to predict potentially if you have a stroke. We will be able potentially to see if there is anything wrong with your organs or early signs of a cancer. So if you go back to what I was saying earlier, the bed has a lot of space, and we, instead of wasting that space with pieces of dumb foam, we will introduce sensors.
That's cool, man. I mean, I've also heard you talk about like partnerships potentially, and this was like an interview from like over a year ago, so I don't know if this is still on the roadmap. I think it was with Jason from This Week in Startup. So you talked about like, I'm someone who's using your mattress. The mattress has kind of learnt my preferences and how I work over a year or two of using it. And then I go on vacation somewhere and I go to a hotel that actually has the same beds as yours, and I can just tap a button and I can basically sleep in the same way that I've been doing at home. Is that something you still think about? And are there any other extensions of that we could extrapolate to as well?
Yeah, I mean, hospitality, it will be a big piece of our growth, right? We wanted to reach a point which we have reached, where the bed is solid and comfortable. And I think now is how do we expand outside D2C, and we get also into hospitality.
So let's talk a bit about the smart, not so dumb bed mattress that you've got right now. So again, I've heard you discuss AI and machine learning and how you guys are using that in a smart way. So I'd love to go through a few examples of what that looks like. So one of the ones that stood out to me was this thermal alarm, which I thought was really interesting. So I'll try to relay what I understood and you can kind of expand on it. So if I've set an alarm for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, my phone alarm doesn't know like what my body's going through at that moment. So using your mattress, if you were setting an alarm at 6 a.m., it could start to change the temperature slightly before I'm about to wake up, so that I'm not in deep sleep or REM sleep. And by the time I wake up, I feel more refreshed or kind of more vibrant or whatever. So like, I'd love to hear are there any other examples of stuff like that you currently have or are working on as well?
We cover multiple phases during the night, right? So first of all, you get in bed and the bed is at the temperature that you like the most. It could be warm, it could be cold, whatever works best for you. As soon as you fall asleep, there is a new temperature setting. Usually we recommend as cold as possible. And the reason is in the first part of the night, you get deep sleep, and cooling can help you get up to 20% more deep sleep. Second part of the night is about REM. So for REM, you need the thermal neutrality. So it shouldn't be too cold or too hot. Otherwise, your brain will not let you fall into REM. And we can explain why. And then there is the thermal alarm. So you can use temperature to accelerate your heart rate and wake up naturally by the time that you want to be up and running. So let's say you want to wake up at 6 a.m., X minutes before, we start changing the temperature, we start reactivating the body for you, and by the time it's 6 a.m., you are already awake. We also have vibration, and so as a final step, if you're not already awake with temperature alone, there is a gentle vibration that will wake you up. But what we eliminated and reinvented was completely the sound. So there is no more sound alarm. Our customers were hating it, and they found that was like being in jail with this weird noise that attacks you in the middle of your REM phase. And so we gently wake you up naturally.
I also know you guys have, if you're sleeping with a partner, you can have two different temperatures in the night for two different people. And I'm curious, like, what you guys have seen, because not only have you got this hardware and software, but you've got all the data that's being collected, obviously anonymously. So I'm curious, like, are there certain things that you guys are observing that X factor helps people sleep better? Or I know on your website, and you mentioned earlier that you guys are helping people sleep like 20% better or something like that. So I'm curious, like, how you're even able to measure that. Is that just movement in the night? Is it people getting deeper sleep versus light sleep?
Yeah. So what we are seeing is up to 40% more restful sleep, which means less wake-ups, less tosses and turns. We help you fall asleep faster. You can save up to 12 hours over a year just by falling asleep faster. So we give you time back that you can spend with your loved ones. And the lesson is temperature needs are very different based on different type of people. It changes based on gender, it changes based on age, metabolism, fat percentage. And so what we see is that around 50% of the couples, they struggle to find a temperature that can work for each of them. And there is where our product solves the problem, because each side of the bed can have a completely different temperature setting. And so whatever you like can be customized for your needs, and whatever your partner likes can be customized for your partner.
I'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about the marketing side of things. Like, how do you guys think about, like you're in the room with your CMO or whoever looks after this and this marketing team. Like, what's that conversation like for you guys? Because it's not just a regular product where you're saying, here's a better mattress that's cheaper. There's an element of education that needs to happen, right? Similar to Levels, like you need to learn about metabolic health before you want to invest $200 a month in their product. So I'm curious, like, how do you kind of merge the educational side with beautiful marketing and a way that actually still feels premium and cool versus like a scientist talking to you?
Yeah, is a great point. I mean, I think on one side, obviously, we are inspired by companies like Peloton and Tesla, and we really love when our customers call us the Tesla of sleep or the Peloton of sleep. From a growth perspective, you want to create education. For Levels is about metabolic health. For our is about sleep improvement and thermoregulation. Right. And there is already plenty of medical and scientific evidence about the fact that thermoregulation improves your sleep. So it's not that we are discovering that. That is proven. We are just the first consumer company that is able to deliver a beautiful experience around that and really improve sleep. And so for us, internally, it's becoming more and more important to talk about organic growth. And so, okay, how do we really distribute this message to more people? How do we find more ambassadors? How do we find more influencers? And most of the times what we have seen working best is giving the product to some of these people. They love it, they keep using it. And after that, they unlock opportunities for us. Paid advertising is something that we obviously do, but is almost a consequence. And so it's just a function of how much organic revenue we make. And based on that, we decide how much we spend in paid.
Love that. Yeah. So I guess the way I heard that was like you need the core message originally. And it sounds like your influencers or ambassadors are kind of a core part of extending that out to their networks. And then you get the kind of cool factor if they're an NBA player, or the legitimacy if it's a scientist or something like that. And then the paid efforts are really there just to amplify those efforts, right?
Yeah, because we are really obsessed with our unit economics. We have amazing unit economics. And to maintain that is always, so first, how much organic revenue I make, and then based on that, we decide how much we want to spend. But we are not, even if we are growing really fast, we are not growing by spending a lot of money. We're just growing because people are liking the product. And that is a famous DJ, one of the best, just reach out because of word of mouth. Some of the best actresses and actors just reach out because they heard about our product, and then they say, how can I help? And that to me is what makes me really proud of what we're doing, because it's just happening through word of mouth.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to dig into that a little bit more, because I think what you described there is exactly the approach I've seen work for the best companies, which is you need something that is worth talking about. It's not just, hey, I'm going to take a mediocre product and paid ads are going to get me in front of everyone. Of course, for some people that's semi-work, they made some money, but at the scale you guys are playing at, and sounds like the vision for the company, if you're saying Peloton of X or Tesla of X, and you've raised this amount of money, you need to grow to that sort of level. Maybe not a Tesla level, but you know what I mean, a grand scale. So I'd love to understand like what that looks like tangibly as someone who's running the company. In two parts you mentioned there. One was how that spreads, so we can come to that in a second. But the first one you mentioned was the ratio between paid and organic. Are there like things that you've learned there that someone listening to this in a different field could learn from? Are there rules of thumb that you followed, or even just the proportion that you're aiming for in an ideal scenario?
So let's start with the first one. I mean, there was recently a tweet from Paul Graham that said the greatest growth hack is your own product, right? And that's absolutely true. If there is no word of mouth, if people don't talk about that, if they do not recommend, it's extremely unlikely that just through paid you can scale. You need an organic coefficient. Then there is a relationship between the two. Then it depends what is now your return on investment on marketing. Call it, I don't know, 4x, right? So for every dollar you put in marketing, you want to make 4x that amount. It's extremely unlikely that you can have such a return only with paid. And so it means that part of the revenue needs to come through organic, and then you have your own paid ROAS. For simplicity, call it 2, whatever, right? I just use simple numbers here. And so for every dollar you put in paid, you make $2, but you still want to make $4. And so it means that 50% additional revenue needs to come through organic channels.
Okay, that's great.
And then you can apply if it's 3 or if it's 5 as a company, but the principle stays the same.
And so that 4x in your example, not saying that's your exact numbers, that's the blended ROAS, I guess, in your case.
Exactly. Yeah. You look at the portfolio, right? So you think in terms of a portfolio, and the portfolio includes some paid and organic initiatives.
And I'm just curious, like, again, understanding you can't necessarily share the exact numbers because that's not even what's important, but more so the method of getting to those numbers in the first place. Is it just a case of you start running ads and you have a baseline of your portfolio of promotion and you say, okay, we're at a 2x, we want to keep improving this, and then just measuring that over time? Or is that something that when you hire your head of marketing or whoever that was, you guys have a benchmark in place just from comparables from other companies or friends or something like that?
So the best way is you need to reverse engineer, and you need to agree on what you want your net margin to be, right? And so you have a product, the product costs $100. You sell it, let's say the MSRP is $100, but then you have $50 in COGS, right? And then you have credit card and returns and replacement. And let's say you're left with $30. Then let's say that you want to have a $20 net margin, so 20%. At that point, you can spend $10 in marketing. It's as simple as that. And that is where you really start stretching the mind of your marketing team, because you say, look, for every unit, you have $10. I don't care where you put the $10, but start pursuing different opportunities, some paid, some unpaid, and make sure that this is what you spend on a per unit basis. And that is where the creativity comes. A mistake we did in the past, and I think other founders probably do, is just to say, oh, let me just try spending on this and that, and then at a certain point you will become more efficient. We try to flip that concept and start instead from $10 is what you have. How can you achieve faster and faster growth?
And I like that approach because you're starting with something that's actually like it's real maths. It's not just, hey, let's just make up a number from day one and we have unlimited money we can spend, because even if you've raised a lot of money, you need to spend it efficiently. So I'm curious, again, without necessarily going into the numbers, do you remember when you initially launched roughly what that looked like and how much it improved, even if just by a factor? Because from my experience, I've worked on marketing. That's been my career, basically working at Google and now working with startups as well. Is you depending on the brand and the company, you normally spend X amount of money, and in the beginning you can decrease cost per acquisition and that sort of stuff because you're still figuring out and optimizing. But then you hit an inflection point where to keep scaling becomes more expensive. So I'm curious, like on your kind of curve, how did that kind of evolve for you guys?
What you said is absolutely true, and I think it applies to probably most of the companies. In our case, we are lucky where is almost the opposite is happening, meaning word of mouth is picking up faster than what we can spend. And so our cost of acquisition blended tend to be lower than what they were. And I think the reason is because our product is getting better, word of mouth is accelerating faster. If you probably had a fixed product that couldn't evolve, probably what you just said is true, because as you get scale, a certain type of customer or a certain audience, a larger audience, is just more expensive. the point of our product when our customers call us the Tesla of sleep is because the product keeps improving through software. You buy an hardware, but then every single day at night, the product is better than what it was in the morning when you woke up. And so this really builds a relationship with our customers where they love it more and more, and that accelerates word of mouth.
No, I love that, man. On word of mouth, just to go into that a little bit deeper as well, many people listening to this would have heard of NPS scores or some sort of metric that measures how much people are sharing or loving your products enough to share it. So is that something, as a concept, we get that, but how does that translate to you in actually capturing a metric? Like, what does that process look like for you guys if you are measuring that?
It is a good question, and I think the answer is really different based on the product and the price point, right? When you sell a product like it ranges from the 1,500 to the 3,000, it's extremely unlikely that you can just share a link with your friends and your friends just start buying, right? It's not an impulsive purchase. And so that type of shareability or referral program, most of the times, they do not work at this price point. But what happens is people start sharing their experience. And so then you build this concept of almost the 7 touch points, and people need to have heard about us at least 7 times before buying. And these 7 times shouldn't be from us. Most of the times our ads, they obviously work best as retargeting tools. But the first 7 times you should have heard about ads from other people. And that is what we try to incentivize, just how happy they are with the product, not even pushing a sale.
Another thing you mentioned there was on unit economics, and you guys sound like you're obsessed about unit economics, which is great to hear. I was actually on a call yesterday with an investor friend who was saying they don't invest in DTC because a lot of the companies they see, their unit economics are really bad, and they don't think they'll ever become profitable. From your experience, what are other DTC founders doing incorrectly, in your opinion?
It's just setting your bar, right, for your net margin. I think that is the lesson I learned, and it's something that we fine-tune over time, and now it's really good. And the reason why it's good is just because we became intentional about that. We have the same people doing the same job, but we made that a priority. And that is all that we monitor every single day together with revenue. And so I think there are 2 ways to build a business. You could build a business that has hyper growth, and you bet on that, which is completely fine. Or there is a business that has all the unit economics and the structure to become a public business and to be here for 20 years. So yeah, often D2C businesses struggle with unit economics, but sometimes, or most of the times, they also try to be in the low end of the MSRP. In our case, instead, our price is more on the higher end, and that is working. So I see investors saying that, not to us, because we don't have the problem, but obviously something that applies to the industry in general.
Who are other brands you look to that are doing it well? Because you mentioned Peloton and Tesla, which obviously are amazing brands, and I can definitely see a lot of overlap in your approach. But in terms of like D2C brands, are there other brands you look to that you say, oh, they're doing a great job, whether that's from the brand side or just from the unit economic side, if you ever even get insight into that?
Of D2C brands, I don't know many others. I think obviously Peloton is doing pretty well, and they have a slightly different approach to their net margin because also of what is their subscription. But at the end of the day, I think what I like of a Tesla or of a Peloton is they're not obsessed with price, which is something that applies to us as well. Our customer is not the type of customer who is obsessed with price. Of the price matters, but they're really buying an experience. They want to be delighted, and if you deliver and you do your job, then paying $50 more, it's something they can digest out of a 1,500 or 2,000 purchase.
Yeah, I'm curious how you guys landed on the price, because I've heard you describe it as like a mid-tier price point. There's some people playing in the $1,000 range. There's people in the $7,000 to $10,000 range. I think yours is about $2,500. Were there lessons learned from landing on a price? Were there like tests that you guys ran to figure out what that might look like, or was it the reverse engineering that you mentioned before around your unit economics?
It's all the three, and setting prices is actually a very tricky activity, right? So on one side, you use proxies, and for our audience is very similar to a Peloton audience, right? And so the Peloton bike was in the 2,000 or 2,500 in that range. Then you need to look at the cost of your product, right, to have a good gross margin. And then you do experiments, and you see how they react to your different price point, and you understand price elasticity. I think there is a theory in Silicon Valley where the best startups they are able to keep raising prices because their product gets better and the experience gets better, and people are open to pay more and more, not just hardware but even in software. And so I think if your product is really good, you should be able to see that sign as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, is that something you think you guys would have in the future, like a $5,000 mattress, or like just increasing prices over time as you start to include more valuable things for that experience?
Yeah, I mean, as you introduce more sensors and you're able to expand the sleep enhancement features, I think we will be able to tap into different audiences. Again, the mattress market itself can range from $1,000 or even slightly lower to a 10,000, or even mattresses at 30,000. So there is plenty of room. That's why I always say we are a mid-tier, mid-low tier price point. Right now, we are not $1,000 because we don't even want to compete in that market where it's all about discounts. We just want to be in a healthy spot where we can be accessible to millions of people.
Yeah, I love that, man. I'm just the last question on the business side before we transition onto the sleep stuff that you've learned. Like, what's a great outcome for you, man? Like, it looks like things are going in the right direction. You raised a bunch of money. You've got happy customers. You've got NBA stars using your products and regular folks like me. Like, what is the kind of longer term vision in terms of a good outcome? I don't mean like the vision for the company, but just like as the founder who's put his life and soul into this, is the plan to go public one day? Is it to sell it one day? Do you want to keep running it for 20 plus years? Yeah, I'm curious where your head's at with that.
I think we're just scratching the surface here, right? I think we have a very clear vision of amazing things that we can build, and everything can be in life, but building those things for the next 20 years, that would excite me a lot. So I think being a public company is a healthy forcing function to make sure that your financials are good, that you're doing the things in the right way. And so I see that path.
You said something there which I found quite interesting, which was you see it as a positive forcing function to make sure your financials are in a good place every quarter, because you have to report that transparently to the public. And I think that's a great point of view, but I guess there's other people who would say, actually, the public markets can really distract you and make you really short-sighted in a way, because they are forcing you to have great numbers every 3 months. Not forcing you, but you know what I mean? Like, there's pressure from Wall Street. Otherwise, your stock price might drop significantly. And I know there's exceptions for companies like Peloton and high growth companies, essentially, because their PE ratios are allowed to be a lot higher, essentially. But I'm curious, like, have you thought about like the downsides to that too, or am I just misguided in my my view on going public?
I think there are different theories, right? I mean, Keith Rabois, one of our investors, he's super bullish on not being a public company because it gives you diligence. Your point is absolutely true, but at the same time, there are similar points from Jeff Bezos, where what you see today in Amazon is something that he started doing 3-5 years ago. So this quarter was built 3 to 5 years ago, and so it's tricky. And it's difficult, and I have never been a CEO of a public company, so whatever I say, it's just my personal opinion, and it could be BS. But I would imagine that you need to be very intentional since from the beginning, because if you start in one direction where, you're really not focused on quarter by quarter growth, then switching to a long-term horizon becomes really difficult. While instead, if you immediately look 20 years ahead and you're really focused on the product that you build, that is the story that you need to tell since day one. And so you will be priced based on that.
We're just going to switch gears a little bit now on the sleep side. Rarely Jeremy on Twitter asked, he'd love to understand the definitive science of sleep, as much as you can pull out of him. There's so much conflicting information on the subject and it drives me mad. And the reason I'm bringing that one up to start is because I actually gave this example on Twitter a few days ago that I watched a 4-hour Joe Rogan episode where there were 2 PhDs in the room and they were talking about, I think, nutrition or something like that, right? And after 4 hours, I felt like I was kind of more confused than before I even started listening. And it just felt to me that there's so much conflicting science out there, and there's not necessarily just a summary bullet point of these are the things that make you a healthy person. There might be some things like eat less sugar, do exercise, that sort of stuff that most people agree on. But with sleep, it seems like maybe there are some things that are across the board people generally agree on. So I'm curious, like from your experience, are there some of those things that we could share with the audience?
I'm pretty obsessed with health and longevity and performance. And what I'm really learning is at the end of the day, like in a lot of things in life, you need to be able to distill the few things that really matter. And they need to be few and they need to be simple. The first one is sleep matters for your health and longevity. There is plenty of scientific now evidence about that. You can read Why We Sleep with the pros and cons, mistakes or no mistakes, and that can be there, or you can read other papers. So sleep matters is one of the 3 pillars of health, together with exercise and with nutrition. So if you really want to live a healthy life and live longer, you need to take care of your sleep, you need to take care of your exercise and your nutrition. What really matters is deep sleep and REM. Those together, they are around 20% each. It could be slightly less, it could be slightly more, but oversimplified, that's what you need.
And sorry, just to clarify, the other part is just light sleep, right? Is that there's just only 3 stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM?
Oversimplified, yes. So there is your light sleep, and then there is deep, and then there is REM. Deep is mainly for your physical body, REM is mainly for your mind and brain recovery. So you need to make sure that you get at least 20% of deep and REM. And that is why usually people say that you should sleep between 7 and 9 hours. It's not that you need that amount of hours, it's that is the amount of hours that you usually need to achieve that percentage of deep and REM. And that's why sleep can be compressed, because you don't really need light sleep that much. It's just a inefficiency of your body in transitioning across these different stages. One thing I started doing since COVID, I started sleeping more. I started sleeping 9 hours a day. I found a lot of benefits in my heart rate, in my HRV. So an advice I always give to people is for a week, just a week, sleep 1 hour longer than what you usually do. That means 7 hours more in a week, which is substantially 1 more night of sleep. And then you tell me how you feel. If you feel better, if you feel great, if you feel energized, with plenty of energy to do things with your loved ones and professional performance, then you have an answer. If you feel the same, then probably it's not worth putting that hour. But I think some of the smartest entrepreneurs that I'm meeting recently, sometimes they prefer to postpone meetings in the morning if they didn't sleep well, to sleep slightly more, because the quality of their performance during the day is 10x better. And so they recover that 1 hour versus just being groggy and sleep deprived during the whole day. Sleep is associated with better health because it has an impact on then the energy that you need to train. It creates hormonal imbalances, sleep deprivation, that then will let you crave junk food. And in general, it's just how you feel and your mental clarity.
And I would recommend, you mentioned Matt Walker, who's got a book,
Why We Sleep.
I'd definitely recommend that book. And if you're interested, if you don't want to read the whole book, there's also an amazing interview with him on Joe Rogan's podcast, which is about 2 hours long. And I've watched that like 3 times because I wanted to go back, because everyone knows sleep is important for you. But when you hear the details and you understand, oh wow, like I'm doing damage every night when I don't get real sleep or get good quality sleep. And I also love the differentiation between, you know, people say they drink a glass of wine or something and they knocks them out and it puts them to sleep. That doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the quality of sleep that your body requires. So yeah, anyway, that's a whole 2-hour conversation for people can go to. I'd love to hone in on some of the ways to self-diagnose. So this was also a question from a listener, Monica Lim. She said, what's the best way to self-diagnose sleeping patterns or optimal conditions? For example, my son and husband sweat a lot at night. I don't. Not sure what would give me the best sleep. So I guess this is starting to hone in on some of the factors that we can actually control to get better sleep. So a few that I've tested, and again, this was using the Oura Ring originally when I got this like several years ago. My sleep wasn't great, so the first few things I did was I got blackout curtains, which made a big difference. You know, it sounds obvious, but really made a huge difference. I tried to manage my circadian rhythm so that I was sleeping around the same time every night. I found that helped a lot. The other one was caffeine. Not having that after lunchtime has made a big difference to me personally. So I'm curious, like for you, like one is your own personal experience, but extrapolating that out from what you've learned, are there other factors people can be looking at to improve their own sleep?
Yeah, so the first thing is really temperature, and it's the example, you know, the person who tweeted at you, right? And so temperature is very personal. We were talking about that earlier. And so it's normal that maybe her husband and her son, they have, you know, very different needs. And that is one of the biggest problems that we solve with our technology. And the other thing is temperature changes during the night. So it's not just, oh, you need temperature X and I need temperature Y. You need temperature X plus 1, minus 1, and multiple changes during the night. In terms of things, there are a lot of things that you can do. A couple of hours before, I do showers, cold and hot shower. So I try to create a sort of thermal shock to my body that helps me relax. From time to time, I take melatonin to help me wind down. I take magnesium because it helps you relax your muscles, in particular if you train during the day. I use blue wave glasses. The orange light helps you to develop your own melatonin within your body. I also have Philips Hue in my house, and so the lights change and they switch to orange at 7:30 every single night. Then there is the temperature of your bed, there is the temperature of your bedroom. I use also the Normatec boots. They are compression boots that you can use, for example, for your legs, and they create compression that helps you relax and also increase blood circulation.
Sorry, to clarify, I don't know about that one. So what, is that just while you're around the house?
It's before going to bed. So let's say I'm on the couch, I wear they're really long boots that create compression and they increase blood circulation. I do stretching and mobility exercises before going to bed. Is a good way, is a good forcing function to really get into, you know, this habit of, you know, preparing to go to bed. One example I make quite often is, and so some of my best friends, they have a kid, right? And she is 2, 3 years old. And if you look at the kids, you start preparing them for bed. Half an hour before they do their bath, and then you let them calm down, you put the pajama, and then 30, 40, 1 hour later, they're ready to go to bed. That habit applies to every human being. So 1 hour, 60 minutes, 30 minutes before going to bed, you need to start winding down because you had a very active day during the, where you were always active with a lot of thoughts. You need to calm down your mind. And you can do breathing exercises, you could do yoga, you could do just meditation. A different area, similar but different, is mind racing. That is one of the other biggest problems for a lot of people. They don't fall asleep because their mind is racing, or they wake up in the middle of the night, they start thinking about something, usually it's about work, and then they cannot fall asleep again. And there, the most important thing is you need to get out of bed. So you don't want to be in bed and associating bed to sort of insomnia or inability to fall asleep. Just go on the couch, you go somewhere else. And when you feel ready to fall asleep again, then you go back to bed. This is called CBTI, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia.
What about, I know something we all struggle with is we're all addicted to our phones and devices, whether that's the TV before bed or your phone. And this is something I've really tried hard to do, but you know, a big part of my job is like to be on the internet, right? So, and for everyone nowadays. So I'm curious, are there things you've done there to try to improve that? And have you seen that really negatively impact people as well?
I have a slightly different perspective here from the average sleep doctor, meaning I always start from the North Star, and the North Star is you need to calm down your mind. Then this doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, you don't need to use the phone, and that there are the theories of the phone and the blue light, which I don't fully agree with. But the key is not that using a little bit your phone is completely forbidden, at least for me, and everything could be different from other people. But the key is don't do things that will reactivate your mind, so you start thinking about work or you start thinking about problems, and then you don't fall asleep. So if there is something that you can do and it's just pure pleasure, that is a way for you to distress from a heavy day, maybe that's the right thing for you to do it. Obviously, if you go through your emails and there is a customers who just reach out and it's really frustrated about something, that will not help you to fall asleep.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, I like the way you reframed that. It was like often people, including myself, will just hone in on this action. Now get rid of this action. Being on your phone's bad, and it also kind of ladders up into this other narrative of social media is bad for you right now because of a Netflix documentary and whatever, right? So I think people have confirmation bias there. But reframing it as, okay, the real reason we don't want to be on the phone is because we want to calm our mind down. We don't want it to be triggered and running all over the place. So I guess it's obviously just finding what works for you. I love that, man. So one last thing I'll ask about that is you're an Italian, so I'm sure you love coffee as much as I do. I'm curious, like on the caffeine side, is that something you've noticed as well?
We have run a couple of studies on caffeine too. And the same applies to alcohol and caffeine. First of all, it's very personal. So what works for me might not work for you and might not work for someone else. And so all the times that you read these studies, they say, oh, you should stop coffee 8 hours or 10 hours before going to bed, it might not apply to you. That's why I don't like those rules. And I think companies like us and every other wearable company is going to disrupt all these average disclosures about how you should run your life. But in my personal case, I drink espresso. So it's a more limited quantity than a full cup of American coffee. And I stopped drinking coffee around 1 p.m. And I go to bed somewhere around 9:30 to 10 p.m. So I go to bed quite early. You need to test it. It might be that you can still drink until 4 p.m. and you don't have any effect. Or it might be that if you drink after 11 a.m., it starts being a problem for you. The rule of thumb is you should stop drinking between 8 and 10 hours before going to bed. But test what works for you. The same thing applies to alcohol. I stopped drinking alcohol. Now it has been a year and a half since May 2019 is when I stopped. And the reason is this. Sometimes people say, oh, I have a couple of glasses of wines and that helps me lose my mind and relax. The reality is it has an impact on your HRV, heart rate variability. It has an impact on your sleep stages, and it has an impact on your heart rate at rest. Then there are a couple of different things you could do. You don't need to be extreme like I was, that you need to stop drinking. But you should stop drinking at least a couple of hours before going to bed. But again, here is still the same rule. It's very personal. For me, it could be 5 hours before going to bed. For you, it could be 1 hour before going to bed. You should measure your HRV and your sleep stages and try to adjust alcohol based on what works for you.
The last question I have for you, how do you think about delegating and leading a team, staying close to the vision that you've got and actually executing kind of week to week or month to month?
As you grow a business, the most important thing for a CEO is to hire and manage particularly the executive team, right? But so making sure that you have the greatest people on board. Second, you need to make sure there is money in the bank, right? It's part of your job to raise money and handle that part. And third, and I kept it last because there is more to say about this, not because it's last, but it's to setting the priorities that the company need to achieve. And the way it works is it's really important you give the right North Stars to your team, and you also give them frameworks that they can use and apply in different circumstances to then execute. Then if they are the right people and they are stellars, they will blow your mind in the execution. But what you need to tell them is where you want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 10 years from now.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So hiring great people, making sure there's money in the bank, and North Star vision, and making sure people are executing towards that. I'm curious, like, what that looks like in practice again. And I know this sounds like really in the weeds, but because I really love those three things at a high level. But I feel like a lot of interviewers, when they're doing this, they kind of stop there and they don't say, well, actually, how can someone listen to this, translate that into their own work? So I'm curious, like, how do you set that vision? Is that through literally like the way you're presenting that to the organization? Is it OKRs that you come up with every quarter or every year? Is it vision statements? I'm curious, like, how that actually translates for you.
On the hire and management of people, obviously, is hiring, is firing, and growing people, right? And obviously, as the CEO and the company grows, you have executives or more senior people. There is the theory of Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. So certain people could be right for a certain stage of the company. They might not be for another stage, or you could grow them there. There are principles about stretching people as much as possible, in particular the ones that are growing fastest. And then there is Keith Rabois has the theory of ammunition and barrels. And so identifying who is an ammunition and who is a barrel. A barrel is really a leader that can lead a lot of different ammunitions versus the opposite. And so understanding how you can build the most efficient teams. Money in the bank is, okay, knowing how much you burn, how much you have in the bank, cultivating a relationship with investors and understanding what's the best strategy. And the North Stars, again, is to try to really agree. We use written documents. We are pretty obsessed with documents and writing. I used to be a lawyer, so probably comes also from that phase of my life. But the other thing that is really important is for people a methodology of work, right? So I always want slides in advance before any recording meeting. So if we have a meeting on Wednesday, I get the slides by Tuesday night. We skip all the slides unless there are comments. And I really push really hard my team to focus only on high IQ discussions. I don't want them to walk me through slides that if I read, I already understand. We would be wasting both our time. And so is where can I deliver IQ value for them, which is actually what the board does for me. For us, our boards are pretty effective because we have great people on the board. And we going through the slides is usually probably 20 minutes. And then we spend an hour and 40 minutes only on high IQ discussions that can break the business.
That's great, man. And you just mentioned the board there. I'm curious, like, what does a good board meeting look like for you?
The board value happens in two ways. It happens in the preparation, right? Is a forcing function to put together your thoughts and really dig deep into the business. Otherwise, you are so into the day by day that you wouldn't do it. And so the 2 weeks to prepare those slides are extremely valuable just on your own. And then there is the second part that is during the board meeting where you really have these deep discussions about things that can make or break the company. And that is where you need partners that they are valuable and that you really respect in that discussion. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time.
Love it, man. We've got to cut this off soon. So I appreciate you coming on. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, man. I think you're doing good, but you're doing it in a way that's actually creating a really thriving business as well, which is like the best of both worlds. And really looking to seeing where the journey takes you, man. Is there anywhere we should be sending people? Obviously there's 8sleep.com. Is there anywhere else we should direct people?
So there is our website, 8sleep.com, ghtsleep.com, where you can see all our products. And then you can follow me on Twitter, is m_Franceschetti. You can find a reference on our homepage of my Twitter. I'm pretty active. And so if you're interested into health and sleep fitness, please follow me.
Yeah, I will put that on the screen too for people on YouTube and in the show notes for the podcast listeners, so it's easy for them to click through. But listen, man, thanks again for coming on. And I'd love to do this again in the future so we can get the update of how it's going.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.